let's talk about aligning shapes with one another and with the page itself. Now, obviously what we're going to need is a bunch of shapes. So what I'd like you to do, and you can do this very quickly, by the way, is draw out a whole bunch of shapes and go ahead and use your object properties Docker to throw in a quick color, maybe something like that, right? And what I'd like you to do is the shapes that you create, make them different sizes, make them different shapes even. Don't just use rectangles, maybe an oval, maybe a star, whatever you want, right? And I would suggest maybe 3 or 4 shapes or more. It all really depends on how far you want to go with all this. But I'm going to stick with maybe 3 here, something like this. And I'll just go ahead and collapse down the object properties Docker, and I'll flip over to my pick tool over inside the toolbox. Now, just give me a second. I'm just going to center everything here on screen. All right, now what I want to do here is I want to make sure that all of the edges of my shapes all line up. Perhaps the left edges, or maybe the right edges, or maybe I want all of the top edges to line up or the bottom edges to line up. Who knows, right? In a previous exercise, you saw how to use the rulers and you saw how to use guides. This is a great example of where you could use guides if you wanted to, but instead I think what I'll do is I'll use CorelDRAW's align commands. So here's what I'll get you to do. Select your shapes just by holding down the Shift key and clicking on them, something like this, or you can click and drag that bounding box around all of the shapes. That would be just fine. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to head up to the Arrange menu and then down to Align and Distribute. And then what I'll do is from the submenu that appears here, and there's tons of commands in here, we'll talk about a lot of these commands here, is I'm going to choose Align Right to get myself started. Now check out the keyboard shortcuts here. They're all single characters, nice and easy to remember. So Align Right is simply R, so you would just type an R on your keyboard, in other words. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Align Right. Okay, perfect. What happens is, as you can see, the right edges of all of my shapes are now in alignment. And because I have all of my shapes selected, if I move one, they all move in unison, right? Okay, let's do another. I still have them all selected here. I'm going to head to Arrange, and then down to Align and Distribute, and then I'll choose Align Top. Or you could just type the letter T on your keyboard. And you would wind up with something like this, right? So they're all stacked on top of each other. All of the top edges are lined up, and all of the right sides are lined up. So, when I'm setting something up, usually I just kind of drop my shapes out onto the page, maybe something like this, right? And then all I do is I select them all, something like that, and then Arrange, Align and Distribute, and then I choose my alignment. Align bottom, or maybe this time I'll choose Align left, and I wind up with something like this. Okay, perfect. Here's another set of commands I want to show you. I'm going to go and select all of the objects that I've drawn out here on my page. I'm going to go back to Arrange, back down to Align and Distribute, and then this time I'll choose Align Centers Horizontally, or the E key on your keyboard. So Align Centers Horizontally, and I get something like this, right? So now all of the centers are all lined up horizontally. And then I could head back, Arrange, Align and Distribute, and then Align Centers Vertically, and now all of the centers, the center points there on my objects, are all sitting on top of one another, if that makes sense. So in other words, this group of shapes are all lined up horizontally and vertically. Great. Okay, now let me show you one more set of commands here. I'm going to spread out my shapes again, maybe something like this. Go and select them all here. Now, not only can you align shapes to each other, you can also align them to your page as well. So what I'll do is I'll head to the Arrange menu, down to Align and Distribute, and then down to Center to Page Horizontally. So in other words, stick them all in the horizontal center of the page. In other words, the space on the right and the space on the left is equal, right? And then I could go Arrange, down to Align and Distribute, and then Center to Page Vertically. And now I have my object sitting in the dead center of my page, right? Now, I want to remind you of a command that I showed you way back, actually, when we were talking about guides. What I'll do is I'll select all of my objects, once again, after I spread them all out there, and I'll head back to the Arrange menu, back down to Align and Distribute, and then there's a command here called Center to Page, or you could just tap the P key on your keyboard, and that's a fast way to get all of your objects to sit in the dead center of your document, regardless of your document's actual size. All right, there you go. There's aligning shapes.
To change up.